It's 1935. A young James Bucky Barnes gazes at the family picture while watching his sister Beck asleep. His father, in military uniform, approaches and tells him that he misses their mother too and that he needs to stay strong for her young sister. Bucky and his father tried to make family life as normal as it was before their mother died. They made the best of those years and Bucky holds good memories from that time. But that burden wasn't easy for a little kid to bear, and soon Bucky started to engage in fights with other kids. He pretended to be strong and happy, but he was angry underneath it all. Bucky knew he was letting his dad down every time he got in trouble, but he promised to stop the fighting. Promises aren't easy to keep, being a kid, but although his father was always so understanding, the last thing his father said to him was that he was so disappointed in him. His father never came home from maneuvers that day. As they put his father in the ground and then explained how his sister will get sent off to boarding school while he stayed on the base with his father's old pals looking for him, he used that strong mask even more to hide how scared and alone he felt. 5 years later, in 1940, Bucky sells smokes to the recruits and adult magazines to a sergeant in return for a favor. The sergeant takes Bucky with him to a club where he asks a girl to dance, only to be stopped by some guy that punches him. Bucky, so used to getting into fights his whole life, immediately starts a brawl involving the whole club, beating up the guy who attacked him until the police show up and arrest him. He gets transferred to the brig at Camp Lehigh until he cools off. Bucky finally gets freed by a major who tells him that he should have expected this from Bucky since his father had a quick temper too when he was a recruit there. Bucky is surprised by this, never knowing this side of his own father. The major leads Bucky to General Phillips, who introduces himself to Bucky, stating that Barnes will be 16 soon. Bucky confirms, and the general notes his talent at hand-to-hand combat and shooting. Bucky, still confused by this interaction, asks if he's in trouble. The general tells him that he's in no trouble at all, and that Major Sampson has recommended him for a special assignment, asking Barnes to keep a good behavior until his birthday. After his birthday, Bucky is shipped for training in England with the SAS, still oblivious at what the special assignment is. He trained hard to be the best fighter possible, and one night, one of the guys brings him to watch a newsreel about the super soldier Captain America. Bucky is amazed at the super soldier's exploits, and for the rest of his training, Bucky couldn't stop thinking about him, going back every night to watch more newsreels, studying his every move. But there was one thing nagging at him though. If the Cap was a super soldier, why wasn't he here fighting the Nazis? What good was a super soldier if not on the front lines? But he guessed it was just a matter of time before the Cap got into the war. After 2 months, Bucky is shipped off again, still not having a clue what this special assignment was. He is surprised to be returned home, and after a few weeks of evaluation, is asked to demonstrate his training to the higher-ups. He bested all the soldiers while being watched by General Phillips and Steve Rogers. As they approached him, Bucky just knew who it was with the general and what all his training in England had been for. The general introduces Rogers as Captain America and tells Bucky he's going to be his partner, leaving Bucky in Rogers' care so he can get him up to date. Later, at Bucky's house, Rogers gives him a new uniform, leaving the young man speechless. His father will be proud of him, and that was the day he left his old mask so he could put on a new one for a new life. After a few weeks together, Captain America and Bucky work on a new mission like they'd been partners for years. The mask, the uniform, and the secret missions made Bucky feel like he was born to do this. At the movies, Bucky and Steve watch a movie about their own missions, and Bucky is not happy about being called a sidekick. As they leave the theater, Bucky continues to vent his criticisms about the actors, the writing, and the lack of girls in the movie. Back at their cabin, Bucky asks Steve why they aren't out in the battlefield fighting Nazis. Steve tells him that they are doing a lot of good here, but Bucky still feels frustrated, asking when they are going to get into war. Steve tells him to not hurry, since war is nothing like training. War means killing other soldiers, people like them. And Steve continues saying that taking a life can be simple, but living with it's not so simple. And soon they were off on another top-secret mission. At a carnival, Steve and Bucky look for an informant. Steve finally finds him and goes to talk with him. Deciding to improvise, Bucky asks out 2 girls for a double date to improve their cover. They offer to buy them some cotton candy, and on their way, Steve tells Bucky what the informant had to say. The German Brandt brothers, the trapeze family, have been getting large shipments of crates, and they're being watched by the FBI since they emigrated. Steve tells the girls to go get them tickets for the Ferris wheel, while the boys go on recon. Bucky asks Steve why these Brandts are worth their attention, and Steve tells him that they are sons of the developer of nerve gas and an associate of Hitler. They find and covertly search the crates, finding lion-shaped statues. They are then caught by the Brandts, but luckily they are able to escape with the help of their dates, but leaving the Brandts suspicious nonetheless. At night, they return in their uniforms, only to find the entire carnival deserted. They hear noise and find their informant wounded on the ground. His last words are a warning that the Brandts are planning to kill an entire station full of soldiers due to leave. The duo rush to catch up with the Brandts train. Bucky leaps on top of the train car and makes his way across it, alerting the brothers inside. One of the brothers climbs up and runs after Bucky with a knife. Cap arrives to back Bucky up, but the Brandt brother throws the knife at Bucky, hitting him in the leg. Wounded, Bucky falls into the train car. As the train approaches the station, Cap fights the 2 brothers on top of it. While inside, Bucky pulls the knife out of his leg and makes his way to the engine car to stop the engineer that is using the lion-shaped statues, made of toxic chemicals, to gas the station and everyone on it. Reaching the engine, Bucky throws the knife at the engineer, killing him. Later, while Bucky gazes through the window, Steve reminds him that he saved a lot of innocent people. Bucky claims to be fine, asking if he's got any mail. A letter has come from his sister, and he proceeds to read it. Steve asks how his sister is doing in school, and Bucky tells him she's doing great, while Steve says that he should write her back. Bucky agrees, but then he walks out onto the porch, thinking about what Steve had said about killing a man and what the hardest part was, but he was hoping that he had been lying. World War II. Captain America and Bucky are the defenders of freedom, the first costumes leading the war effort. But they weren't the only ones anymore. Namor, the Submariner, and the Human Torch and Toro joined the fight against Hitler and Hirohito. Suddenly, Bucky was only a kid in a mask among the invaders. Somewhere in Poland, early 1942, Bucky scouts the enemy while reporting to Cap through the radio. Suddenly, Bucky hears the noise of gunfire as the comms between them cuts off. Bucky returns to camp only to see it in flames. The soldier reports what happened to him, telling him that it suddenly started with a blast, and then Cap and the others were gone. Bucky finds Cap's shield stuck in a tree, wondering that he would never leave it behind. They were taken alive, and Bucky, although lacking confidence, is going to try and save them. Just 3 weeks earlier, Bucky had done everything wrong. As the invaders fly on an Atlantean airship, Namor looks for his betraying kinsman. They finally spot a Nazi submarine full of Atlantean soldiers. Namor jumps off the ship, followed by Toro carrying Bucky. Bucky lands only to find himself surrounded, but before he is killed by an Atlantean soldier, Namor goes to his rescue at the request of Captain America. Because of this, their target escaped, leaving Namor angry at Bucky's incompetence. Bucky was having trouble fitting in. He was trying to prove himself, surrounded by superhumans. But as he loses control of his motorcycle, he finds exactly what he was looking for. Carrying Cap's shield on his back, Bucky climbs this seemingly abandoned building and listens to the people inside. He watches a scientist being called Dr. Zola giving orders to SS soldiers, until, to his surprise, he sees Toro, the Human Torch, Captain America, and Namor trapped in water tanks, being subjected to some kind of experiment to transfer their powers to one single soldier. Leaping blindly was his only option if he wanted to save his friends, and as the recipient of this experiment tries to break his bonds, Bucky leaps from the shadows and takes out 2 SS soldiers. Dr. Zola and the new super soldier are alerted to Bucky's presence and run to face him. Bucky unleashes a barrage of gunfire, but the soldier melts the bullets midair. Besides the torch's flame, the freak had the speed of Cap and Namor combined, the kind of speed Bucky couldn't dodge. But his powers were new, and he didn't have their control. As the soldier flings his powers around uncontrollably, Bucky tries to run, but the soldier grabs and throws him against the wall. Bucky knew he couldn't last long against him, as he heard Dr. Zola commanding the soldier to catch him before the powers were off. He just had to last long enough as he throws Cap's shield and breaks the water tanks, freeing his friends and taking out Dr. Zola. One thing he knew was how to take a punch, so, as he takes a beating from the soldier, Captain America intervenes, taking the soldier out with one single punch. Later, as they waited for reinforcements to take their prisoners, and as the torches melted down Dr. Zola's machinery, Bucky realizes he's feeling good despite the injuries. Namor approaches and tells him that he hopes he's not too injured to walk, because none of them will be carrying him anymore. That was as close as Namor ever got to a compliment, and it meant the world to him. It's late 1944, in Europe. Bucky and Toro have been left at camp while Cap, Torch and Namor meet with the President. Bucky, frustrated for not being called like the rest of the invaders, eavesdrops on some soldiers discussing the capture of an Allied spy, Martin Schiller, who's been in undercover for over a year on the side of the Nazis. Their intel suspects he's being held at Auschenberg prison camp, and if they don't find him soon, he'll likely expose his fellow spies infiltrated in Hitler's upper ranks. Hearing this, Bucky tells Toro they've got to do something. Toro tries to reason with him, but Bucky eventually convinces Toro to help rescue the spy. Later, as Bucky and Toro walk to their objective, they find and capture an enemy vehicle and uniforms. As they approach the prison camp, now disguised as Nazi soldiers, Bucky advises Toro to stay outside to assist his escape, and because Toro doesn't speak German. Upon getting inside, Bucky deduces where they're torturing Schiller by spotting a lighted-up building with a guard at the door. The guard demands his papers, so Bucky knocks the guard out and enters the room, seeing Schiller, bruised and bleeding, chained to a chair. As he frees the spy, they hear guards at the door, but seeing an oxygen tank nearby, Bucky uses it to create an exit. They make their way out of the building, but Bucky stops confused, realizing this wasn't just a POW camp, as they're surrounded not by soldiers, but by a mass of malnourished prisoners. Toro then arrives, flying above them, calling Bucky as the Nazis open fire, indiscriminately killing the prisoners and injuring Toro. Amidst the confusion, Bucky finds a giant ditch full of corpses. Enraged, Bucky lashes out at the Nazis, beating and shooting them as they approach, while Toro helps Schiller escape by melting a hole in the fence. Bucky, now out of bullets, starts to beat the soldiers with his gun, throwing a soldier into the corpse pile with him, demanding to know how he could let this happen. Toro calls Bucky to go as he burns the remaining soldiers, and so, led by rage and horror, Bucky knocks out the soldier, grabs a hand grenade, and blows out a watchtower, taking down the fence. He turns to the surviving mass of prisoners, urging them to run, but Toro reasons with him, saying they can't help these people if they're dead. Reluctantly, Bucky runs with Toro, promising to the prisoners he'll come back for them. Back at camp, the general gives them a earful over disrespecting the chain of command, not caring about their success in retrieving the spy. But Bucky was barely listening. His mind was back in that camp, and whatever punishment they had coming, he didn't even care. Later, Bucky wakes up from a nightmare involving the prisoners he left behind, as Cap enters his tent. Bucky asks him if he knows about what happened, and Cap says he's sorry he wasn't there with him. Bucky expresses how bad that place was and that they have to go back there. Cap tells him that they will in time, but they have new orders, since Schiller had valuable intel that they have to act on. Bucky then realizes he's not being court-martialed, to which Cap points out that they'd had to court-martial him too if that was the case, complimenting Bucky in what he did. Months went by, and one mission led to another, until Bucky and Steve ended up on Zemo's island, and their war ended. They never got to see those death camps liberated, as Steve was thought to be lost, and Bucky going on to commit some atrocities of his own. It's 1958. A man in a Captain America costume is pursued by some men shooting at him. He ultimately finds a way to stop the pursuers, but is stopped by a woman with a gun pointed at him in one hand and a grenade in the other. They flirt with each other as they are interrupted by another man, revealing all this to be a training exercise, with the man in costume being Bucky, now the Winter Soldier, and the woman the Black Widow. After the explosion that had made Steve Rogers and Bucky thought to be dead, the Russians fished Bucky out of the channel and immediately recognized his value to their cause. They brought him back to life, but he had no real memories of his old life. Only his training remained. They replaced his arm with a mechanical one and used his abilities for their own purpose. He was their secret weapon in the Cold War, and the Black Widow another. Something about her touched what was left of his humanity buried under all that programming. After the training exercise, the Winter Soldier and Natalia, the Black Widow, fall into each other's arms. Later, he wakes up and tries to sneak out, but she is awake and asks to go with him. He tells her that no one can know they are together, and so he suits up and bids her farewell with a kiss. In Berlin, the Winter Soldier prepares for his mission. His target, Sergei Ivanovich, a former KGB official planning to flee to the US. He knows too many Russia's secrets, and his defection must be stopped. On top of a building, the soldier aims at his target with his sniper rifle, but is surprised by a child running towards his mark, and he misses his shot, hitting Sergei on the shoulder. The Black Widow shows up and offers him help. He tells her to get the child out of the way, resuming his pursuit. Sergei escapes through an alley with his daughter, and is stopped by the Black Widow. The soldier catches up to them and asks Sergei if he wants her daughter to witness this. Sergei begs not to hurt her, and the soldier assures him that the child is in no danger. The widow takes the crying child from Sergei's arms as the soldier approaches him and kills him with a knife. The next day, in Moscow, Bucky lashes out at his higher-ups, furious for not telling him of Sergei's daughter. He is then left alone with his boss, Dmitri, as he tells Winter Soldier that he is right. They should have supplied him with a complete dossier, but he confronts him that he is not really following orders, given his relationship with the Black Widow. The soldier tries to play innocent, but Dmitri knows better and tells him that Natasha belongs to the Red Guardian, to which the soldier responds that she doesn't belong to anyone. Dmitri then asks the soldier if he realizes he was shouting at his higher-ups in English. Without any answer, the soldier asks only if he's dismissed. Dmitri dismisses him and reports through the phone that they have a problem. That was the first time they saw the cracks in their conditioning, and Winter Soldier was put away between missions. But the soldier went on as their killing machine, as Bucky was kept locked away in his head for decades, until Captain America fixed him, and all the horrors he had committed came back at him. If not for Natasha, he might have put a bullet in his brain to quiet the ghosts. Bucky visits his young sister Rebecca at St. Francis Alzheimer's Hospital with Natasha. Now physically older than Bucky, she is surprised to see him so young, asking if his father is with him. Bucky comforts her as Natasha introduces herself. Becca tells her she seems like a good woman to take care of his brother, since he is too busy taking care of everyone else to do it himself. Bucky then says goodbye to his sister, as he and Natasha go on to their adventures.